They were like, hey, congrats, you created the worst business model of all time. Like, it's impressive how bad that is.
Welcome to the PushPress Podcast,
where gym owners learn to dodge bad advice, crush their competition, and actually make money doing what they love. Let's get after it. Here we are, special edition of the PushPress Podcast. Best hour of the day, Jason Fernandez.
Yeah.
Kind of riffing on what we want to talk about, and I think we picked a decently mildly spicy, kind of like a Taco Bell mild hot sauce of customer
2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like maybe they're hot because their hot's kind of mild. So
that's fair.
Hot packet.
Okay.
We're going to talk about customer feedback loops, learning from your customers, which I think is, to steal what Jason just said, a lost art, but also something that maybe has been talked about negatively in our space.
By me, so I confess.
For you do.
I have crapped on surveys and customer feedback many times in my less educated years. I feel very different about it now. But yeah, I do think it is. I think so. So I think there's two concepts there. I think there is customer feedback, and then I think there's surveys. Not necessarily the same, but a tremendous amount of overlap. Customer feedback is super important. And for those of you watching that are thinking, should I do this or should I do that inside the gym? You should probably base that on customer feedback, not just think it up in a vacuum. So like when you guys make products or you have a roadmap, I would imagine it's some combination of here's kind of what we see or what we think, and we're listening to the customer or the end user about whether we should do that or not.
Yeah. And in the end, it becomes kind of this art of partially what the customer thinks. But then you also have to understand half the time the customer can't see the world like you do, or where you like how you're shaping it. So the questions you ask are more important than who you ask.
I think that's the lost art component of it.
Yeah.
So we get questions all the time like, should we survey our members? And again, full confession, for the longest time I said absolutely not. I have since changed my tune. And we've recently done this at Best Hour where we did I talk to you about like we recently did like a whole attribute map exercise?
No.
And from that came some very significant changes that we made inside of fulfillment. So like this applies it in any business. It doesn't have to be about a CrossFit gym, but we went through that process and came to the conclusion there's certain things that we were doing that really people didn't value.
Oh, I think you did mention some of this.
Yeah, and that was really eye-opening for us because now you're moving into this potentially like dangerous business world of, am I putting time, energy, and resources into things that people look? And 100% of entrepreneurs have done this, by the way.
Yeah.
You just want to get out of that as fast as possible. So what we've been telling people is like, you want to survey people at a very specific moment in time about a very specific thing. So whatever it is you're trying, you can't just be like, how's your experience here? I always like to think of it like this. When did you do your level 1?
2009.
Okay. So at some point, if you did your level 1, you probably had a scenario where the coach saw somebody in the circle and it was like, hey, everybody, we're going to look at Dan's squat or something like that. It's called an active classroom. And the coach will bring the person in the middle, and then everybody will be watching. And then as an evaluator, if I was watching that, if I had somebody that was going to be interning on seminar staff, the mistake that would be made was the person interning would say, all right, everybody, let's watch Dan's squat and then tell me what you see. And then they look back at the group and there's 8 people watching this and they get this crazy hodgepodge of stuff. They're like, oh, his shoes are brown. And like, I don't really like that t-shirt. And it's just like, that's not what I wanted you to see because it was a bad question, to your point.
Right.
Like you have to ask a specific question. But if you say, hey, everybody, look at his knee and tell me what you see at the knee, you probably get unanimous answers about, right. Oh, his knee's there. So I think the specificity of it is the most powerful component of getting feedback.
And then on top of that, I think you take it a step back. To get to the specificity of what you're asking, you have to have an intent for why you're asking.
Correct. And that's, so the survey is actually the very, very end of that whole exercise. Like that's the very last thing that happens in the whole evaluation process. Yeah. So when you look at, so like in a CrossFit gym, you would do an attribute map. You would look at what do my clients value? And then effectively like, what are we good at? You would prefer that they match. Right. I want to be really, really good at the things that they care about. And then I put all my eggs in that basket. what you find in a lot of areas is that most gym owners are doing a bunch of things that they like to do, but their clients don't actually really value. Right? Programming could be an example. Like most people in the CrossFit gym don't care about programming. They just don't. Not that programming is not important, as it kind of gets you the end state, but your members largely don't care. You're spending an immense amount of time and energy and resources doing programming or toying with programs. And come to find out they like more, they want some more social events, or they want, they like more options in the retail store. So it's really getting into that. And what we found out was we were doing a bunch of stuff that we had concocted in a vacuum that had tremendous cost, low value. And when you look at an attribute map, those are the ones you take off the table.
Right.
I will tell you how bad it was. When I presented this to some people, I was trying to get some feedback on it. They were like, "Hey, congrats, you created the worst business model of all time. Like, it's impressive how bad that is." And I was like,
So the odds were against all of that.
And they're like, "It's impressive. Statistically, you nailed it." And it wasn't like everything they were doing. It was a component of what we were doing. So we had to go back to the drawing board. But first we went and we started asking people a series of questions, and all that culminated in a survey.
Let me back up a little bit. You said you were anti-survey before, and now something changed your mind. What changed your mind?
I got educated on what would make a good survey.
Okay, so you just didn't know what made a good survey for?
I didn't know what made a good survey, honestly, because I had never been surveyed well, number one. But then I didn't understand what the anatomy of a good survey would be, right? You want to get, I don't know, how many gyms you guys deal with that have like in some sort of, when somebody off-ramps or they cancel, they have a survey that goes out and be like, "Hey, why are you leaving? Is it money? Are you injured? Are you going," like, whatever. And like, that's an example of a really shitty survey.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would want to find out something much more compelling when somebody's leaving, because that's probably, in most instances, take out they're leaving or they're moving or something like that. That's at their greatest point of pain. They no longer want your thing anymore. It would be in my best interest to figure out what that is and try to fix that. Because if I can fix that, downstream, you're talking about a significant reduction in churn.
Right. You're getting ahead of it.
You're getting ahead of it now.
Yeah.
You're not going to you might be able to save that one, but your future self will thank you.
And I would argue that if you try to save them too hard, you won't get real answers, because they're going to feel like you're just coming at it from.
This is going to sound weird. In that scenario, I almost think it's best that you should assume the cancellation, so that you approach this with a very genuine, be like, "Hey, I know you're not coming back. We missed. We blew it. Please help me help the next person so that you don't have this.
Yeah. In fact, I would wager you have a better chance of saving the churn if you completely approach it from that side than some like, "Let me fix it. Can I give you a discount? Tell me what I did."
Well, here's what I think. You have a much higher chance of that person coming back.
Yeah.
They may not change their mind right there on the spot, but they're at least open to it now. They're like, "Oh, they actually care about the fulfillment here. Things will probably change at some point, and then I'll reconsider, and then I'll have a much better, comfort level going back there."
Okay. So let's go to your attribute map survey that you did.
Can
you explain the process of like how you thought about it and what you did?
So
like, tactically all the way through.
So I was going to do it completely backwards, and somebody saved me from this, because like when I was learning about this and looking at it, my immediate thought was survey. He was like, "Don't do a survey." He's like, "Because your survey is going to be biased because you made it. So it's only going to have the things that you want on. And therefore you will get bad or biased data right out of the gate, at which point it will not be the outcome."
Like, there's no way it couldn't be biased.
No, it's 100% biased. So you have to do this in a because I think you were doing this recently, you have to do this in a lot of informal settings, and you have to ask like guided questions, but you have to leave the specifics out of it. So like what the questions we were asking for weeks was
this like an in-person interview?
We would do it on small group calls.
Okay.
And then anytime I had somebody on a one-on-one, I'm like, "Hey, tell me this." And what I was looking at, I said, "Hey, of all the things that we do, what do you value the most, and what could you do without?" I didn't ask them if they liked small group calls. I didn't ask if they liked the curriculum. I just left it completely open-ended. If you interview enough people, it will all start to map into a clean list of things. And we did that for 4 weeks, hundreds and hundreds of people. And then it was very clear. Like, I didn't even have to run the survey at that point, but that was just like the last thing that we did. But it was very obvious what we should get rid of.
So the written survey is last.
The written survey is last.
Yeah, that's how we do it too.
And the written survey is comprised of everything that they told you.
Yeah.
So we didn't input anything. We only put things in the survey that they told us.
Okay. And so one thing I've learned, and I'm curious, is this, I think this goes to what you were saying, but one thing I've learned in surveying or questioning customers is you don't ask them for 1 to 10, like, hey, is our coaching program 1 to 10? You do it in the lens you were doing it, except what I've been recommended is it's binary,
right?
My coaching program or my online tutorials, which one is more important to you? And then you do that through a couple products. And when you do that across all your customers, across all the products,
yep,
you get the same shakeout.
Mm-hmm.
But you make them go like, you have to pick one, left
yep.
or right.
Yeah. Yeah. If you introduce any ambiguity, the data is no longer
the subjectiveness of like, what's an 8 or 9 or
who knows, right? Like it's useful to you. So when we did it, everything was rank order.
Yeah.
So there was always going to be things at the bottom, and that's how you start to sort out and sift through the stuff. Because if you're doing this, well, let's just say you have like a typical attribute map will probably have what you do. So like if you're looking at XY axis, on the Y axis, which is the vertical axis, you would start at the top, the things that people have told you they value most, and you work your way down the list. And then on the X axis, you would rank them 1 to 5, meaning 1, I do it poorly, and then 5 were the best at it.
So it's basically creates a 2x2 box.
Very like close.
What they like and what you do.
Yes.
Good or bad.
Yep. And the key component is there very likely will be some things that you're good at that they don't value. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, you need to serve the customer.
Yeah.
But there will be for sure things that you are good at that they like. At which point, now you make the decision about allocation of resources, and you say, oh, I'm going to take all these other things off the board, and I'm only going to do what they like the most. And this is an interesting exercise, because the immediate thought is usually, well, if I get rid of this stuff, they're going to be upset. It actually works the opposite, because really what you're getting down to when you're kind of doing this attribute map is you need to be willing to be bad at things. You just want to be bad at the things that people don't care about.
Well, let's play a fun game. Whenever I think of 2x2 matrices, I think of a name for every land that this. So what we got is like, if on the Y, their value, on the X is your execution ability. So it's like they value it, you're not good. They value it, you are good. They don't value it, you're not good. They value it, you are good.
You are good.
Can you come up with a name for each of those that it makes up? So like what would the name be for like, they value it, you're not good?
They value it, you're not good. What would that be?
So I'll give you an example. In SaaS, like they don't value it, you don't do it. We call that trash land.
Yeah.
Right. Table stakes, trash land shit.
Right.
No one cares about. You shouldn't spend a lot of time. Yep. Right. So that these are the names that like we've come up or like have floated around. So I'm just curious, like, cause that way when I think of it, I'm like, that's trash land shit.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
I like to think of it as like the bottom right quadrant is always like death. Just don't play there.
Bottom right is they don't value it.
They don't value.
You're good at it.
You're good at it, but they don't value it at all, because now it's just a tremendous.
That's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a tremendous output of resources.
Yeah. And you biased. You're biased. You want to be good at it.
Right.
You want it to be good. You're forcing them to like it.
Correct.
Maybe they feel guilty because they know you like it.
Right. So they're like, oh, okay. But you have to be willing to let those things go. And it all falls under this idea of like, hey, if I want to be the best in the world at something, I have to be willing to be the worst. I always like to give Dennis Rodman as an example.
Oh yeah.
So anybody who's familiar with basketball or Carmen Electra for that matter, when you ask people what is Dennis Rodman known for, they're like rebounding. They're like, that guy couldn't defense, but that's not why people would pick.
Yeah, it's rebounding first.
He just happened to be a good defender because he was scrappy. But I would also argue,
but that's why he was a good rebounder.
Correct. So that is, when you look at that, is like, that's why San Antonio took him. That's why the Bulls took him. They didn't took him because he was putting points on the board. They took him because they're like, if the ball comes off the rim, the odds are that he's going to get it and we'll get another crack at scoring.
Yeah.
And they knew he's not putting up any points. That's not
a lot of locker room influence.
No, none of that. He's actually a liability, but they're like, he's so good at rebounding that we'll deal with all the other shit.
Yeah.
And your clients will kind of have the same feeling, which is like, hey, if you're so good at this, we'll cut you slack on these other things. They'll cut you even more slack if you just outright tell them, I'm not going to do those things. And they're like, oh, okay. but you're so good at the stuff that they want, they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting exercise, and we did it. It was very eye-opening for us.
Okay.
And I think about so like if we were to do it for a gym, it would be, let's just say, coaching, events, and then you might have like a series of special, like personal training, nutrition, youth classes. And then this will very quickly help you figure out if you should even touch any of those. And if you have 6 of them on there, it's very likely that you would take the bottom 3 off the board completely. And it's like, we're just not going to do these things anymore.
Yeah. Let me ask you one thing, because I was thinking through a gym, there's only a finite list of things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, let's say one of them is, I don't know, kids or nutrition. And you're like, well, right now our current clientele has not bought into nutrition because I haven't done it well. I haven't marketed. I haven't put effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
When would it be they don't value it because you have the wrong customer there because you haven't tried. And so of course not going to value it.
Yeah, that very well could be. I mean, that's arguably a different exercise of selection, deselection, like making sure you have the right customer, which you might have to do both of these at the same time. So for somebody who has maybe kind of gone down the wrong path, this might take you 18 months to go through that and then make that fundamental shift over.
Because you got to slowly
transition away from the things that you're kind of currently doing. So you do need to be thoughtful about execution once you've come to the pretty binary conclusion that like, oh, we should just not do these things anymore.
Got it.
But that's where I think like personal training can fall in that bucket. And they're usually like, if you wanted things that would like trigger you, that these things should be up for evaluation. They're usually things that you chase for revenue purposes, not for value creation purposes. They're like, oh, I'm going to do personal training because there's money. I'm going to do nutrition because there's money.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do,
if you haven't bought into the why behind it,
or if you're just not good at it,
right?
It's just like, okay, well, I could get good at that. Now we have
energy.
It's energy, it's time. Like, how long is it going to take you to get good at it? Like, is that something you even want to do? So the like a good example of surveys would be, better surveys on the back end, right? When you have people that are offboarding, but then also, because you brought up, should we talk about onboarding? Survey people immediately when they're done with onboarding. Hey, how was this?
Let me ask you a question. This is something we've been kicking around. When is onboarding done?
Technically never, in my mind. Like, you're kind of always on.
It is definitely a gray zone.
Yeah, it's definitely gray, but it kind of depends on how you design your onboarding, right? It's not like in most onboardings, there's a definitive end date where like you're done, you move into the next phase, right?
Like the question is that time-based or is that like customer growth-based?
It could be both. Yeah, it could be both. I think in most gyms, if we were going to try to make this binary, it would be time-based or event-based. Like, hey, once you get to this check mark, you're technically done, and then we move you into next phase or whatever it's going to be.
That's it's interesting. I've been looking through a lot of data on onboarding. What I realized is that is the biggest hole in the industry at this moment in time. So
why do you think that is?
Okay, so I'm building this flywheel, this book around flywheel. And so
I know Dan loves some flywheels.
Love me some flywheels. So anyways, the one thing I like, what I'm trying to do is connect the flywheel stages. So it's like, if you do sales really well, onboarding should be kicked off. If you do onboarding really well, class delivery should be kicked off, etc. And as I went through it, the one thing I realized is like all of them work except sales to onboarding. It doesn't matter if you're referred.
Yep.
If you're a fucking personal referral, like bring my cousin in.
Right.
They churn less likely than just a rando off the street, but
That's
not statistically different. Like 6 or 7% better. They have a 6 or 7% better retention rate over 6 months.
If they're referred.
Oh,
yeah.
It should be 25.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, if my cousin brings me in, like, there's no way you should lose me because my cousin's there.
Why do you think that is?
Well, as long as it's a good fit otherwise you should have disqualified them. You shouldn't have sold them.
Right.
But if it's a referral, it's like they've already been sold on the system. They've already got social proof because they're getting brought in by whoever's bringing them in, theoretically.
Yeah.
Right. Anyways, I tried to look across all these different slices of data. Did they buy a recurring plan? Are they on a punch card? Did they get referred into the clip? Blah, blah, blah. And the statistical deviance between all of the groups are so minor.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't print any of it.
It was statistically insignificant.
Exactly.
You know what I've seen, this is anecdotal, like I don't have any data to support this, I just see it regularly, is that referrals in a lot of instances are less likely to be onboarded.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because
they just skip it.
They skip it. They're like, oh, he's good. We'll put him in there.
Shit that won't show up in the data.
Correct. Yeah, that's the weird little underlying.
So maybe it is 80%, but the ones that actually or the ones that don't get onboarded are like, well, I don't really get it, and they quit.
Right, because you didn't integrate them properly.
Like they skipped onboarding.
You skipped like the most important piece, which is like getting them ingrained in the gym, the culture, everything that is important to you to grow, whatever that is.
This is a great example of like how anecdote beats data. So good.
Where was I just listening to? Did you just talk about this on a podcast recently?
Which one?
That exact where
anecdote beats data.
Anecdote beats data.
This is such a good example.
Is it the Jeff Bezos thing? Yeah, that's a perfect example of like really being
connected
in tune with your business and be like, because you're right, that's never going to show up anywhere because nobody's tracking how many people did onboarding.
Unless you click a button that says like, I'm skipping this guy right past onboarding, which nobody would do.
Nobody does that. Yeah. So, but if you're paying attention, you look at that and you're asking good questions on the back end, you could pick that up.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard, but you could pick it up.
It would be anecdote though. It would be like my feeling.
But then you could go test it.
But so that's how we loop. That's why customer feedback's important to us, because eventually it's like that feedback is like, oh, okay, well, we have to actually get a signal that someone's done onboarding that's clearer than just 30-day signals. You know, like there actually needs to be I finished this or I started this.
Check the box.
Yeah.
They went through it.
That's how like anecdote becomes data, is like this loop of discovery.
But yeah, that's the attribute map is an interesting one because you guys deal with even more gym owners than we do, but they're always looking for other stuff. But most of the time we're just guessing as gym owners. We're like, well, I think this because the gym over there is doing it, and this is what I heard on this podcast. So like maybe I should try that out. But there's no analysis on what that's going to cost me from a time perspective, how I would implement it. Like, how are we measuring effectiveness when I change this thing inside of the gym?
Yeah.
So it's bad all the way around. Like you made a change with no forethought, and then you didn't measure whether it was
like the baseline was unclear.
Yeah, so it's a shit show from start to finish, and then 6 months later, a year down the road, you can't figure out why nothing has really changed. You're like, oh, well, retention isn't better, length of engagement isn't better, sales aren't improving. Well, it's because you didn't sit down and go through the exercise of like coming up with measurables on top of that and say, I always like to think, how do I determine if I'm going to kill this idea?
It's a good way to think about it.
Like, because you're going to kill a lot of stuff.
You need the data to give you the proof that this is a killable.
I'm going to do this, but I want something that's going to tell me this is good or bad.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm just going to float off into oblivion, do a ton of this and get nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having like 18 initiatives kind of floating around.
You know what I mean? It's like do less in that scenario.
Yeah.
So
we all get bit by that. I think PushPress was definitely there.
Well, I don't think anybody's immune to it. Yeah. I just think you are less susceptible and the errors are less egregious if you pump the brakes and you think about it a little bit more analytically. But I think the key to it is it is a balance between the conversation and the analytics. It is really where like the magic happens, where you'd be like, okay, what I see, what I think, what they say matches the numbers. Another good example would be everybody wants a 2:17 p.m. class. Who is everybody? Should we do that? Mm-hmm. Does that even map out? Do we have the personnel for it? Like, what would this do to the business? Like all those things. Because you didn't talk to enough people. And you find out, oh, it's not everybody. It's like Dan and Nick.
Yeah. That's an interesting feedback is like, in our world, because we were so empathetic to our customers, gym owners.
It's the same. It's the exact same.
You hear 4 times and it becomes everybody.
It's everybody. So anytime I hear everybody, I always question everybody. I always wonder who's everybody, because it's not everybody. It's usually a subset, a very small minority of people.
And usually it's people we like, right? Right. Like we want to help them.
Right. I recently had somebody come in and they're like, we should start a kids program. And I was like, I'll bite. We have people that want to do it. I'm like, cool. We're never doing that.
Yeah.
I just told him, I was like, we're never doing that. He's like, why? I was like, we don't have the resources. It creates conflict on the schedule from our primary customer, which is you. And now I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But earlier in my career, I'm like, yeah, we should absolutely do that with no forethought for like age groups. What market do we even have access to get this thing off the ground? None of that. It was just like, oh, somebody wants it. We'll make it. Cool.
In there. Yeah, cool. Okay, so actually, let's go back to that 2x2 matrix, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Which quadrant do you think is the most important quadrant for a gym owner to pay attention to? I think what you said, the bottom right is the worst one to be in.
The bottom right. So if you were to just draw a mean line, just diagonally through the whole matrix, effectively you would want to focus on everybody
Everything
over the line.
Over the line.
Above the line. You would want to figure out what those are.
Even when that mean line is in the they don't value it and we're not good at it box?
If they don't value it and we're not good at it, I think there is a time and a place for that. An example would be...
That would be cutting edge stuff.
Correct. And there's a very specific subset of customers where that is valuable.
Yeah, that's like innovation land.
Correct.
It's either trash land or potential innovation.
And that's where it's dangerous, right? So you have to really, like, I'm sure you guys have customers that fall in this box, and we have customers that fall in this box. So anytime we're going to be playing in that box, I really want to be very selective with the people that we pull in to play in there. And I will tell them outright, I'm like, this is beta. You guys are going to help us figure out whether we should do this or not. And if we don't like it and you don't like it, we're going to kill it. But there's a very specific group of people that are willing to do that with you. So you have to know who they are.
Got it.
Who they want to experiment with you, and they want to, it's actually, there are some of your best customers actually fall in that category. They want to help you grow. They're a little bit more advanced than a lot of scenarios. And they're like, hey, I would actually love to help you guys make the next thing.
So in that regard, they, meaning the single logo, might value it, but the whole doesn't.
The whole might not.
Okay. So
maybe.
Yeah.
Because you're an expert.
Well, it's like AI 3 years ago would have been that bucket.
Correct. Like should we do this? Should we not? So if you wanted to kind of evaluate it, you would look anything above that line.
Just straight along the mean line.
I mean, so as straight as you could. Yeah.
And then as a guideline. So if it's in the we value it, we're good at it, they value it bucket, but it's like trending down towards the they don't value it side of things,
you would consider cutting it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because you have to factor in that,
I guess their value is more important than anything else.
It is, but you have to factor in is like, that's where the could we be good at that question comes in. And the answer might be no. So like they might value it a lot, but like we just can't play in that world.
Yeah.
So like we just have to take it off the table. Okay. Like for us, like we're not getting into the SaaS world. People want that stuff. But I'm like, I don't know shit about SaaS. I mean, I know some stuff about it, but I'm like, we're not going to be the best at that. So it makes no sense for us to redirect off the thing that we're really good at. And this is the whole exercise, right? So what you end up doing when you work through this process is you end up cutting a bunch of stuff, and then you reallocate all that time and energy towards the things that they want most, and you double down and you make it better, and then you make it better again, and you make it better again. And then that's where you make the happiest customers of all. So it's an interesting exercise, and I don't know anybody that hasn't gone through that and made errors there. But once you kind of learn that, you're a little bit more cautious about how and why and when you do things, which is really important, because as a gym owner, you have limited time and resources.
Yeah.
So it's like you shouldn't be exploring all things. So
okay. Well, I mean, that was a podcast about customer feedback, and it spun off into a pretty cool matrix on how to evaluate what you should and shouldn't do, which I guess is kind of like cousins.
But it's based on customer feedback, because you're going to need them to help you fill the matrix out.
Yeah.
It's just not necessarily like, are you happy with this? It's more along a kind of a value creation, value capture discussion, I guess.
Right. Okay. So let's wrap that up. That was that's pretty good for a time, right? Okay, cool. Let's wrap that up. I guess for a question, I'm going to ask this: if you haven't or have been afraid to ask your customers for feedback directly, that's a shitty question. That's a bad one. Let's flip it around. Yeah, well, fuck it. If you haven't, or if you've been afraid of asking your customers a question, and you might have changed your mind in this episode, and you do ask them a question, do ask them, fuck man, I'm fucking this up. Good thing we had a good.
I think you're doing great.
What the hell's a good question for this? Or should we just kill it with that one?
What? So you're trying to?
Because people email us we ask them a question and they email us just like feedback shit.
Yeah, I think.
Like maybe what's in your trash land that you need to cut? Let's do that.
Well, so there's two ways to phrase the question. One is, what do you value the most? Like, what do you love? What could you not do without? And then what do you like? But if we got rid of it, it wouldn't change your opinion about us.
To ask the customers?
Yeah. So I think you have to ask it from both angles because you want both ends of the spectrum. I want to know what you love. I also want to know what you kind of don't really care about.
Mhm.
That helps paint a more clear picture about what you might be doing that you should just stop doing
Right.
immediately.
And there's actually one thing I want to double click on before the end of the episode that I think is super important. For me at least, I do these live with customers first.
Yes.
Because you want to get to know like what questions you're asking, how are they feeling about them, how are they responding to them. So a real low fidelity way of doing this, so you can just do it tomorrow, is just take a customer to the corner, take them out for coffee, and just start asking some questions about what they value, they don't value, what is important to them, what is not important to them, and just see where they take you with it without getting too prescriptive about what you're asking. And then just use that information to start inform you on like what the next series of questions can look like.
Yeah, the questions will get more and more refined based on the answers that you get from them, and that way, that's where you start to get like to the meat of the issue there. And,
okay,
but super important.
Cool. So go talk to somebody in your gym, get some feedback from them, and understand what they are liking in your gym and what they maybe don't care about so much. And shoot me an email, podcast@pushpress.com. Let me know if you find out anything cool. All right. See you guys. Thanks for listening to another episode of the PushPress Podcast, where we help gym owners, entrepreneurs, and fitness enthusiasts thrive with actionable insights, inspiring stories, and strategies for growth.
Don't forget to follow the show to stay updated on new episodes. And if you're ready for more, join our free Facebook community for gym owners. Check the show notes for the link, and we'll see you next time. Keep raising the bar for your business and community.